We are busy people. When you complete a source protection plan, you want it to be done. We at the Division of Drinking Water agree. We want to help streamline this process for us all. Let's talk about common mistakes and oversights we see in submitted source protection plans so you can avoid them. For source protection, we receive 4 different types of plans. The Drinking Water Source Protection Plan, an updated source protection plan, a revised source protection plan, and the preliminary evaluation report. Let's talk about the basic outline of a source protection plan. This consists of the delineation, inventory and assessment of potential contamination sources, management of potential contamination sources, implementation, record keeping, contingency plan, public notifications, and waivers. We will have a link for you at the end of this presentation that you can look at the outline more specifically. The delineation is where the source protection zones are set up. This section is where you need a professional geologist or a professional engineer stamp. It's mandatory so that we know a professional is taking some responsibility for the delineation and is backing up the delineation with their license. Next is an inventory of potential contamination sources and assessments. This includes, but is not limited to, abandoned wells, landfills, septic systems, businesses, and others. These potential contamination sources need to be assessed as adequately controlled or not adequately controlled. To be assessed as adequately controlled, one or more of these controls needs to be present. Either regulatory controls, best management and pollution prevention practices, physical controls, or negligible quantities. So let's go through these 4 controls to assess a septic system. This is a potential contamination source we often see misassessed. Let's go regulatory controls. The local health department requires soil testing, design approval, and oversees the installation. However, there is no regulation or oversight after the septic system is installed. If a homeowner does not keep the septic system going in good working condition, it will fail. No one is watching for that. So no, that does not have regulatory controls. How about best management and pollution prevention practices? In this case, we're talking about landowners. They may know and be using these practices, but we can't guarantee that. So no. Okay, next, physical controls. We often see justification for physical controls when there is a protected aquifer. However, a physical control needs to be a man-made structure inhibiting contamination, such as the lining of a pond or a cement pad. That is not the case with the septic system, so no. And then lastly, we have negligible quantities. With a septic system, that just will never be the case. So no, a septic system is not adequately controlled. Next is the management of potential contamination sources. You can install regulatory programs which include zoning ordinances, subdivision ordinances, site plan reviews, design standards, pollution source prohibitions, property condemnation. Regulatory programs are best to control future potential contamination sources to keep them out of your protection zones. There's also non-regulatory programs. These include public education, best management and pollution prevention practices, groundwater monitoring, household hazardous waste collection, water conservation programs, written agreements, and property purchases. These types of non-regulatory programs are best to control current potential contamination sources within your zones. These 4 sections are sometimes overlooked or left out of a source protection plan. The implementation is what you're going to do, and the record keeping is what you have already done, so that's specifically for an updated plan. The contingency plan is just how it sounds. Just make sure you have one. And the public notification is met by your consumer confidence reports. Monitoring waivers. Monitoring waivers renewal applications are often left out of updated source protection plan submittals. This oversight can be quite costly. A use waiver may be available if the chemicals within the VOCs and/or pesticides parameter groups have not been used, disposed, stored, transported, or manufactured within the past 5 years within zones 1, 2, or 3. To qualify for the use waiver, 2 steps need to be completed. First, list the chemicals used within zones 1, 2, and 3. And second, submit a dated and signed statement from the designated person verifying that there were no use of VOCs and/or pesticides. Susceptibility waivers may be available if you can demonstrate that the source is not susceptible to contamination. A monitoring result of at least 1 applicable sample needs to be submitted, taken within the past 6 years with a non-detect. A dated statement from the designated person verifying confidence that the susceptibility waiver would not threaten public health needs to be submitted as well. And verification that the source is developed within a protected aquifer and that you will have a public education program. Another waiver that you should be aware of is the reliably and consistently waiver. This waiver is based on sampling results. It is not related to source protection plans, but I just wanted you aware of it and its availability. As you can see, without a waiver, pesticides monitoring is required quarterly and VOCs is required annually. With the susceptibility waiver, pesticides are decreased to 2 every 3 years or 1 every 3 years, depending on population served. Or with a use waiver, the pesticides is not required. The VOC is reduced to once every 6 years with both susceptibility and use waivers. With lab costs, making sure to keep your monitoring waivers can be very important. We would like your source protection plan to be a useful tool for your organization. Keep an eye out for incoming or outgoing potential contamination sources. Our goals are the same, to keep the water source protected. Next, let's talk about the revised plan. A revised plan needs to be submitted to the Division of Drinking Water within 180 days of when a groundwater source is reconstructed or redeveloped. If there is any change in the protection zones due to increase or decrease of pump rate, change of the influence from other wells, such as increase or decrease of their pump rates, or new wells within your zone of influence, any major reconstructions such as larger screened area or deepening of your well, or changes to the protection zones to be need to be completed by a licensed geologist or engineer. When evaluating a possible new source, you need to think about completing a potential evaluation report or a PER. Make sure that there are no potential contamination sources within zones 1 and 2, and you need to have land use agreements before you have approval to drill. The land use agreements can be the biggest holdup. Without them, you cannot drill. Thank you.